My son raised his whiskey glass high and shouted, "This old man doesn't belong here." Laughter cracked through the room, then silence. My neighbors stared at the carpet. Not one voice rose for me. He had never spoken to me like that, not in front of others. So why now? Behind me, the music cut off. The crystal glass in my hand suddenly felt too heavy to hold. What else had he planned to strip me bare tonight? The party lights were still flickering when I found the guest room door locked from the inside. The hum of last night's party still clung to the walls, half-inflated balloons drooping, champagne flutes sweating on the counter. I stood in the hallway barefoot, the carpet cold beneath me, staring at the locked door to the guest room. My room now, apparently. I tried the handle again. It didn't budge. From inside, I heard movement, drawers closing, soft laughter. My son's voice. His wife's voice. The same room I had slept in for 5 years since my heart surgery. I didn't knock. I just stood there, waiting for someone to say something, to open the door, to even acknowledge I existed. Instead, the hallway light flickered, and silence pressed its hand over my mouth. I turned and walked back to the living room. The couch still held the shape of whoever last slouched into it, probably a neighbor's kid. A paper plate of half-eaten pie sat on the armrest like an afterthought. I cleared it and lowered myself onto the cushions. My back ached, my legs still stiff from standing most of the night. On the kitchen island, the crystal whiskey glass sat untouched from yesterday. The one I brought out every New Year's, my late wife had gifted it to me for our 30th anniversary. Thick-cut, beveled edges, engraved with our initials. It used to shimmer under the party lights. This morning, it just looked out of place. Condensation had formed a sad little halo beneath it. Cold. Forgotten. Footsteps behind me. My son entered, already dressed for the day, pressed slacks, polo shirt, not a wrinkle on him. He glanced at me, then away, like I was something left behind. "You're up," he said, voice flat. I didn't respond. I looked at the glass. "We're gonna do some cleaning today," he continued. "Figured you could head out for a bit. Maybe take a walk." My jaw clenched. "In my own house?" He hesitated, just a flicker, then smiled like a manager delivering bad news. "We talked about this, Dad. You said you wanted peace this year. So let's just keep things smooth." "I wanted peace," I said, standing. "Not exile." Behind him, his wife entered. Holding a mop bucket. She didn't look at me, just walked past and started clearing cups. Confused again, she muttered, loud enough to land. I turned to my son. "You locking the room now?" He rubbed his temple. "Look, it's just easier this way. You've been in there for months. We need space too. I paid for this house. And we've been covering everything else. Food. Utilities. Insurance." He pointed toward the front door. "That comes with certain expectations." I laughed, short, sharp, tired. "Expectations? I raised you. Fed you. Buried your mother while you were still finishing college. You think that means you get to do whatever you want?" he snapped, louder than intended. His wife flinched. The silence afterward was thick. He adjusted his collar. "Just try not to make things harder than they need to be. Watch yourself this year." That last line. Watch yourself this year. Like a warning wrapped in a smile. I looked back at the crystal glass. It hadn't moved, but somehow it felt like it had. Like it had watched this whole thing play out and decided to judge me for it. I didn't touch it. I grabbed my coat, walked past them both, and stepped outside into the January air. No one stopped me. Outside, frost clung to the railing. A neighbor across the street waved. I didn't wave back. Inside, I heard the guest room door open. And then close. The door was locked, and my place in the house might be too. By Sunday morning, the church bulletin had a new name listed under our address. We attended the same church every Sunday for 23 years. I had carried him books, served coffee after services, even replaced broken pew lights on my own dime. But that morning, as I picked up the bulletin and scanned the address list, I froze. Under our family's address, it no longer read Mr. Harold Hall. It now said Mr. and Mrs. David Hall. My son and his wife. My name was gone. The rest of the congregation milled around, shaking hands, exchanging New Year blessings. No one said anything directly, but I saw it in their eyes. The women with fur-lined coats whispering behind hymnals. The deacon who usually greeted me with a firm handshake simply nodded, barely meeting my gaze. I sat in the far pew, alone. My son and his wife arrived late and slid into the front row. She wore a fur-trimmed coat I had never seen before. He held the Bible I had gifted him for college graduation, my name still inside the cover, unless they'd torn the page out. Pastor Mills took the pulpit and cleared his throat. Before we begin today's message, I'd like to thank the Hall family for their ongoing generosity and support. Especially David, who's agreed to step in and help manage our building fund campaign this year. People clapped. I didn't. David turned his head slightly toward me and smiled. After the service, the congregation gathered in the fellowship hall for coffee and cookies. I tried to make myself invisible near the back, but it didn't matter. Every movement felt like it echoed. Every laugh felt like it wasn't mine. That's when it happened. Standing in the middle of the room, my son raised a white envelope and said, "We're excited to announce that Mom and Dad's house will be undergoing some changes this year. We'll be taking over the home responsibilities, bills, maintenance, all of it, just to make things easier." I froze. My coffee went cold in my hand. Someone clapped. Then another. Soon, polite applause rippled through the room. I stared at the crystal whiskey glass in the photos displayed near the cake, New Year's Eve snapshots. One showed it beside a bottle of scotch, untouched, dwarfed by party cups. It looked out of place, forgotten. Just like I had felt. Diane Plaskett, a neighbor who used to bring me casseroles when my wife passed, leaned in and said, "Must be nice to let the young ones take over, huh?" I said nothing. As I turned to leave, I heard my daughter-in-law's voice behind me, "Oh, and Harold won't be needing a key anymore. We've simplified things." It was said sweetly. Casually. Loud enough for people to hear. I stopped at the door. My hand tightened on the knob. She had stripped it all down into one sentence. No key. No voice. No place. The final indignity came from someone I didn't expect, Pastor Mills. He caught up with me at the parking lot, gave me that same polite nod, and said, "Transitions like this are hard, brother. But sometimes necessary. Let them carry the weight now." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat had closed around the words. I got into my car. I didn't drive home right away. I sat there for a while, staring at the frost on the windshield. I remembered a day not long after my wife passed. I had been standing in that same church parking lot, holding that same crystal glass in a gift bag, planning to toast the new year with my son for the first time alone. We had clinked glasses that night and promised we'd be stronger, just the two of us. Now even the memory felt fraudulent. When I finally drove back, I saw the mug. A souvenir mug, bright blue with a cartoon bear, sat where the crystal whiskey glass had always been, right on the kitchen counter. Like a placeholder. Like a joke. No one said a word. The message had already been delivered. Was I a guest in my own legacy now? The banker tilted her head. "You don't have access to that account anymore, Mr. Hall." The bank still smelled like lemon floor polish and printer toner. I had opened my first account here the year my son was born. Now I stood in front of a woman young enough to be my granddaughter, who wore polite confusion like it was part of her uniform. "I'm sorry," she said again, her fingers tapping across the keyboard. "But the checking account ending in 1998, your name's no longer primary on that." I leaned forward. "It's my pension account." She hesitated. "It's been converted into a managed household fund. Authorized under joint power of attorney." I felt something shift in my stomach. "That's not possible. I didn't sign anything." Her face flushed. "You might want to speak with your family, sir." I walked out without speaking another word. The wind hit me like a punishment. My coat barely held together at the buttons. I hadn't replaced it since Carol passed. I climbed into the truck and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. At home, the front door was unlocked. I walked in to find my daughter-in-law vacuuming the living room, earbuds in. The TV played some daytime legal show with the volume too low to hear. She saw me and pulled out one bud. "Something wrong?" I held out the bank's printout. She didn't even blink. "David and I talked about it. It's more efficient this way. Less confusion with payments." "Less confusion?" I asked, my voice low. "We've got bills going out from 3 places. It just made sense to centralize. He's managing it now." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Managing?" She nodded. "You still live here, Harold. You don't need to worry about numbers. Just enjoy your time." That line, "just enjoy your time," hit like an obituary. "Where's David?" "He's at the office. He left early. Said to remind you we're redoing the pantry this week. Some of your things might need to go." I moved past her into the kitchen. The cabinet where I kept my folders, birth certificates, Carol's will, house deed copies, was empty. "You touch my papers?" She stayed where she was, arms folded now. "They're in safe hands. David's got them at the office. He said you've been keeping too many duplicates." I opened the fridge out of reflex. My leftover roast, gone. In its place, kale and oat milk. Even my food didn't belong here anymore. I walked to the dining room. On the wall, I saw a new photograph framed, a candid shot from New Year's Eve. Everyone laughing. In the corner of the photo, blurred slightly but unmistakable, was the crystal whiskey glass sitting alone on the side table. Isolated. Amused. "You know," I said, turning to her, "your tone is always calm. But it cuts sharper than screaming." She smiled. "I find calm is more effective." I went to my room, or what was left of it. My boxes had been rearranged. Some taped shut. On the nightstand, a cheap lamp had replaced the one Carol gave me. There was nothing here I had chosen anymore. Later that evening, David came home. He didn't avoid me, he walked straight into the living room and sat down like nothing had shifted. "I went to the bank," I said. "I figured you might. Want to explain?" He sighed. "You've been forgetful, Dad. We didn't want things to spiral." "You mean spiral away from you?" He looked at me, dead in the eye. "You said you wanted peace. We're making that happen. Financial peace. Household peace. You forged a power of attorney." "No," he said quickly. "We used the one Mom signed years ago, with your name as backup in case of health issues. That was for emergencies. And we're in one, aren't we?" he said, standing now. "You think this is easy for us? We're cleaning up your mess. Consolidating." "Consolidating," I repeated. "That's what you call stealing now?" "I call it protecting what's left." That night, I sat at the table, lights off, fingers tracing the rim of the souvenir mug. The crystal glass hadn't been thrown away, not yet, it had just been buried. Like me. How many signatures had they stolen already? The lawyer's receptionist didn't look up. They already filed it, sir. I hadn't spoken to Greg Mathers in years, but he still answered my call like we just had lunch yesterday. We'd coached Little League together back in the day, his son, my David. Greg had gone on to become a well-regarded estate lawyer. Honest. Methodical. Not easily shaken. Which is why his voice on the phone, after I told him what happened at the bank, carried more pause than reassurance. You should come in today, he said. Bring any documents you still have. I don't, I said. They took them. A breath on the other end. Then get here. Now. Greg's office hadn't changed, old brown couches, brass desk lamp, the faint scent of pine from the plug-in near the window. His receptionist, Lisa, still wore cardigans with seasonal pins. This one had a little silver snowflake. I'm here to see Greg, I said. She tapped keys. Regarding the Hull property? I frowned. Yes. She didn't look up. They already filed it, sir. I stared at her. Filed what? The ownership transition. Deed revision. It's in process. My legs felt numb as I walked into Greg's office. He didn't greet me with a smile, just handed me a printout. A draft deed transfer. Typed, notarized, stamped for submission. My signature at the bottom. That's not mine, I said, my throat dry. Greg nodded. I didn't think so. The forged signature looked good, close enough to pass a casual glance. But I'd never loop my H like that. Carol always teased me about it. They filed it through a third-party broker, Greg said. Not a direct attorney. Means they knew what they were doing. He leaned forward. They're transferring the house into a limited family trust. You're being listed as a non-controlling occupant. Which means you don't own it anymore. You live there at their discretion. I stared at the paper. At the black ink that had killed my home. How long before it's final? A few weeks. But once the documents are in motion, courts don't take kindly to delays unless there's clear fraud. There is fraud. We'll need proof. Originals. Communications. They have everything. Greg hesitated. Do you have anything? Emails, texts, even verbal exchanges? I shook my head slowly. They've been careful. The crystal whiskey glass came to mind. That night, I had taken it out from the pantry shelf. Someone had boxed it away behind cleaning supplies. I'd placed it on the table, wiped it with a soft cloth. The initials still caught light in just the right way. I looked at Greg. Can I fight this? He paused. Legally? Possibly. Emotionally? He exhaled. That's going to get ugly. I walked out of the office with the printout in hand. My name, my home, and a stranger's looped H mocking me from the corner of the page. Outside, the sun had dipped behind gray winter clouds. My breath came out in white puffs as I unlocked my truck. When I got home, David was already there, on the couch, scrolling through his phone, legs up on the coffee table like a king in a throne room. I dropped the paper in front of him. He glanced at it and didn't even flinch. You filed it. He didn't deny it. It's what needed to happen. You forged my name. You've been slipping, he said, voice calm. This is us protecting your legacy. You're stealing my legacy. No, Dad. We're managing it. You always said the house should stay in the family. In the family, not under siege. He leaned forward, voice lower now. You're not well. You're paranoid. You're angry. That's not a safe mix. I stared at him. You're talking like I'm already gone. He stood and walked past me, patting my shoulder as if I were a pet. We've got this handled now. You don't have to worry anymore. That night, I sat at the table again. The souvenir mug was in the sink. The crystal glass sat in front of me, finally back where it belonged. I poured a splash of the old Scotch Carol had hidden behind the flower jar years ago. As I lifted it to my lips, I caught my reflection in the bevel, warped, tired, but awake. They thought they had me penned in. But I wasn't dead yet. What if I turned their game against them? If your child ever betrayed you like this, what would you do first? Let me know in the comments below. At the town diner, my chair was already missing from our usual table. The first Saturday of the new year, I did something foolish. I went to Roy's Diner, our town's unofficial town hall. Bacon grease in the air, coffee always too strong, same linoleum tiles since '91. I figured if I could just sit in the booth like always, maybe things would feel normal. But the table near the window, the one I'd shared with the same 4 men every Saturday since Carol passed, had only 3 chairs now. My chair, the one with the scratched leg I always joked about, was gone. Nobody said anything about it. Not Roy behind the counter, not Marlene refilling coffee, not even Bill Anders, who used to borrow my snowblower every winter without asking. I took a seat at the counter instead. Close enough to hear them talk, far enough not to be invited in. Bill's voice carried. David's handling things sharp these days. Got the deed filed last week. Heard they're converting the old guest room into a nursery. Nursery. I turned slightly in my seat, just enough to meet Roy's eyes. He looked away. Marlene came over, placed a mug down. I didn't order. On the house, she said softly. Just thought you might want something warm. I wanted to throw it across the floor. Instead, I nodded. Took a sip. It tasted like nothing. Midway through the second cup, the diner door chimed again, and in walked David. He spotted me immediately, made a small show of surprise. Dad. I didn't know you'd be here. He turned to the room, smiling like a politician. Hey folks, just wanted to drop off some papers for Roy. He handed an envelope across the counter. Just confirming the house deed update. Needed a local witness to confirm the notarization last week. He said it casually. Like it was an errand. Like it wasn't a betrayal. Roy opened the envelope, scanned it. All seems fine. I stood. It's not fine, I said, voice steady. Roy blinked. Harold. They forged my name. David chuckled. Dad, don't do this here. Here's exactly where I need to do it. The room froze. I never signed that deed. I never gave up that house. He filed it with a fake signature and used a trust to lock me out. That's not protection. That's theft. A man at a nearby table leaned toward Bill. Is that true? David raised his hands. He's confused. We've talked to his doctor, there's concerns about early decline. My blood went cold. You spoke to my doctor? No, he said smoothly. But the signs are there. Forgetting things. Getting angry. You all saw it at the New Year's party. They had. And now he was using it. Roy cleared his throat. Look, Harold, maybe it's best if you both. No, I stepped forward, placed both hands on the counter. I built that house. I raised him in it. I paid the taxes. And now he's repaying me by erasing me. David's face hardened. Dad, you're embarrassing yourself. You embarrassed me when you told a room full of people I didn't belong in my own home. Gasps from the back. Bill looked between us. Wait, you mean that wasn't a joke? David exhaled. It was symbolic. You all took it too seriously. Roy said quietly, you never said it wasn't serious. David turned to him. Are you taking sides now? Roy looked at me. Then at the envelope still in his hand. Then back at David. I'm staying out of it, he said. Which meant, of course, he wasn't. David turned to leave. Come on, Dad. Let's go home. I'm not going anywhere with you. The door closed behind him. I sat back down. Finished the cup. Nobody spoke to me. But nobody spoke to him either. Later that night, I came home to find the lights off in the living room. A new lock installed on the hallway cabinet. The one where I'd kept old tax forms and Carol's letters. My key didn't fit. I walked to the kitchen, opened the cupboard. The souvenir mug was there, cleaned, polished, placed beside the cereal boxes. The crystal whiskey glass? Gone again. They left me no choice but to fight. That night, I canceled the lights, and lit my own fire. I sat in my truck outside the hardware store, staring at the receipt in my hand. It was for a padlock, a fireproof box, and a prepaid cell phone. The kind of things you buy when you know the people under your roof have already crossed the point of no return. That morning, I'd visited my pension advisor, Carol's old contact, one town over. It was a quiet office with carpeted floors and a faint lavender scent, smelled like waiting rooms and second chances. After a few forms and 2 photo IDs, the accounts were mine again. The moment I signed the authorization reversal, something in me settled. I drove home just before sunset. The lights were still on in the house, music playing low. From the driveway, I could see the silhouettes of David and his wife through the kitchen window. They were laughing. I walked in without a word. They didn't notice me until I opened the basement door and flipped the circuit breakers. The whole house went dark. What the hell? I heard from upstairs. Dad? David shouted. What are you doing? I stood in the basement with the breaker panel open, flashlight aimed at the control switches. I waited. Footsteps thundered above. David came down, holding his phone as a flashlight. Why'd the power go out? I didn't answer right away. I canceled it, I said finally. He blinked. You what? Cable, electricity, gas. All in my name. All gone. You're joking. I met his eyes. Try the Wi-Fi. He looked down at his phone. No signal. A beat of silence. You can't do that, he snapped. I just did. We have a tenant agreement. You have a fake deed. He stepped forward. This is harassment. No, I said. This is ownership. I walked past him, up the stairs, and into the kitchen. I opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and shut it with a little too much force. They followed me. You're being unreasonable, his wife said, crossing her arms. You took my accounts. You locked my cabinets. You threw me out in front of the town. And now you're punishing us? No, I said, sipping the water. I'm reminding you who this house belongs to. David's voice cracked now, the confidence peeling. This isn't helping, Dad. It's not meant to help, I said. It's meant to hurt. Her face twisted. You're bitter. I turned to her. No. Bitter is cold. I'm angry, and anger has teeth. That night, they lit candles. The central heat didn't work. She stormed around the kitchen wrapped in a blanket, muttering about lawsuits. David made one call to the utility company. They said the account holder had full right to cancel, and that it would take his proof of ownership to reconnect. Good luck with that. I slept in the truck. By choice this time. Better to sleep cold in truth than warm in delusion. In the morning, I came back inside. Found the souvenir mug in the sink, cracked. No one mentioned it. I went to the basement and retrieved the box I'd hidden behind the old oil cans. Inside, nestled in a soft cloth, was the crystal whiskey glass. I held it in my hands, studying the line that now ran through one side, a faint crack from the last time it had been mishandled. Still intact. Still mine. I set it on the mantel where it used to live, right above the fireplace. Let them see it every day now. Let it watch them. They won't go quietly, I knew that much. What would be your first move if you were in his shoes? Comment below, we're reading everything. Monday morning, 2 police cruisers pulled into the driveway. The knock on the door wasn't urgent. It was practiced. Professional. I was in the garage, tightening bolts on a rusted lawn chair when I heard it. 3 steady raps, then silence. I looked through the slats of the blinds and felt my stomach turn. 2 police cruisers. One officer already stepping out, the other standing by the passenger side with his hands on his vest. David opened the door before I could get there. "Morning, officers," he said smoothly. "He's inside." I walked into the entryway just as they stepped in. The lead officer, a tall man with graying temples, gave me a polite nod. "Mr. Harold Hall?" "Yes. We received a report of escalating domestic tension, concerns about unsafe living conditions." "From whom?" "From your son's wife," he said. "She reported utilities were shut off in a retaliatory manner, and that she felt unsafe. She forged my name on legal documents. She stole my bank accounts." The second officer, younger and less comfortable, shifted on his feet. "Do you have proof of that?" "No," I said. "Because she took it." David stepped forward. "Dad, we're not trying to escalate this. We just want peace. You don't get to define peace after kicking me off my own accounts." The lead officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we're not here to take sides. We're here to assess the situation. Are you currently residing here full-time?" I nodded. "Do you have access to your own room, utilities, private space?" They locked the cabinet. They changed the pantry. They threw away my medication. "That's not true," David said. "He's been confused lately. Forgetting things. Making threats." "I cut the power," I said plainly. "And I'll do it again." That startled the younger officer. "Sir, please don't say things that can be interpreted as hostile." I turned toward the mantel. The crystal whiskey glass sat in its place, catching the light. Cracked, but standing. "You want to talk about hostile? That glass has survived longer than the people who claim to love me." The lead officer sighed. "We're not arresting anyone today. But we are advising all parties to separate for 72 hours. Cool things down." "You're kicking me out?" "No," he said. "We're asking. Voluntarily. We'll escort you out if needed." David said nothing. His wife stood in the hallway, arms crossed, a victim's mask painted perfectly on her face. I looked at them both. "You used to call me a rock. Now I'm just something you want to roll out of the way." Neither of them replied. I packed 2 bags, clothes, my lockbox, Carol's letters, and the crystal glass. I wrapped it in a towel, tucked it in between the sweaters. As I left, David didn't meet my eyes. His wife offered a thin smile. "Don't forget your jacket," she said sweetly. I didn't take it. Outside, the air bit through my flannel shirt, but it didn't matter. I drove aimlessly for a while. Past the park Carol used to love. Past the grocery store where the clerk still asked about her. Eventually, I pulled into the lot behind the VFW building and parked. I slept in the cab again. That night, the moonlight hit the passenger seat just right. I saw the towel shift slightly. I reached over and unwrapped the glass. The crack had spread. Hairline now. Almost invisible. But I knew it was there. And it still held its shape. The shards still glittered in the streetlight. The church prayer list had a new addition: pray for Mr. Hall's wandering. I stopped by the church on Wednesday morning. Just to sit. Just to breathe in a place that didn't feel poisoned. The foyer was quiet, lit by a row of dusty windows. Pastor Mills wasn't in. Only the administrative assistant, June, was typing away behind the desk. She gave me a soft, unsure smile, the kind reserved for widowers and people who forget things. "Coffee's fresh," she offered. I shook my head. On the wall beside her, the prayer list was posted. Names neatly typed, categories in bold: healing, provision, new beginnings. My name was under guidance. Pray for Mr. Hall's wandering. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I didn't say a word. Just walked out. At the grocery store later, I reached for a can of soup and felt someone watching me. It was Lana Wexler, who used to bring her son over for playdates with David. Her eyes flicked from me to the cart. Then she said it, "Is everything okay at home?" I paused. Why wouldn't it be? "Oh," she hesitated. "I just heard you're not staying there anymore." She looked embarrassed. But not enough to stop talking. "My cousin's friend saw you leaving with the police." Of course. Of course the cruiser had been seen. Of course the parking lot had whispered my story into the town's bloodstream. I nodded slowly. "Tell your cousin's friend I'm fine." That night, I sat in my truck again, parked near the diner, close enough to pick up the Wi-Fi. I opened my email for the first time in days. One subject line stood out: listing confirmation, Hall property. The sender? A real estate agent. But not just any agent. It was signed by Mark Enfield. My daughter-in-law's brother. I clicked. The listing had gone live the day after the power was cut. Photos of the house in full daylight. Staged. Airy. Perfect. And in the third image, on the mantel, was my whiskey glass. Still cracked. Still standing. The listing mentioned multi-generational flexibility and ownership in clean title transition. I didn't even know what that meant. But I knew the smell of a flip when I saw it. They weren't trying to live in the house. They were trying to sell it. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. They hadn't just removed me. They were cashing me out. I forwarded the email to Greg Mathers. Then I turned off the engine and sat in the dark, wrapped in a coat that wasn't warm enough, clutching a towel-wrapped glass in my lap like a relic. Like it still meant something. They weren't building a home, they were cashing me out. I walked into the courthouse with a folder, and walked out with an order. The clerk at the county courthouse wore glasses too big for her face and a no-nonsense stare that had probably reduced dozens of men like me to silence. But I didn't come to beg. I came with a folder. Inside were the printouts, the forged deed Greg had confirmed, the listing email from Mark Enfield, the listing screenshots showing my house, my furniture, my life, packaged for sale like I was already dead. I handed it to her and said only, "Emergency injunction." She looked through the papers, one by one, her lips pressed into a flat line. Then she reached under the desk and pulled out a yellow form. 2 hours later, I stood in front of a judge. He didn't ask for tears or apologies, just facts. "Do you have proof the signature was forged?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you have evidence that the current occupants are attempting to sell the property?" I passed him the listing. He studied it. Then nodded. "You'll get a temporary hold while we investigate," he said. "If your claims hold, the deed filing will be frozen pending legal resolution. No sale, no title transfer, no eviction." "Thank you." He looked me in the eye. Most men your age give up before this point. You didn't. I didn't respond. There wasn't time for pride. Only restoration. I left the courthouse with the injunction in hand. As I stepped into the sunlight, it felt heavier than anything I'd held all year. And more powerful. That afternoon, I visited Greg. He read the order, whistled low. This'll jam them up. They can't move a dime now, not without risking federal fraud. He made copies. He smiled for the first time since we'd met this month. Time to deliver it, he said. Greg insisted on coming with me. Said lawyers make better messengers when the house has snakes inside. We drove together. Pulled up to the driveway like it still belonged to me, which, now, it legally did. David opened the door and stopped mid-sentence when he saw the document. Greg handed it to him. Emergency injunction, Greg said. Filed. Signed. Backdated to cover the listing. Effective immediately. David read the first page. Then the second. His ears turned red. This is harassment. This is court-ordered, Greg said. Any further property activity and you'll be in contempt. That includes continued listing, renovations, or financial transactions based on assumed ownership. His wife appeared behind him. This isn't final, she hissed. Greg smiled politely. It's final enough to freeze your tracks. They didn't invite us in. We didn't ask. As we turned to leave, my eye caught the fireplace. The mantel was empty. The crystal glass was gone. I didn't ask where it was. I didn't need it anymore to make my point. Back at Greg's office, I placed the glued-shut version of the whiskey glass on his desk. It had been broken in 3 places after that night in the truck. I'd found an old bottle of clear epoxy and fixed it myself. Not perfect, but strong enough to hold water. Greg looked at it and asked, "That yours?" "Yeah," I said. "She gave it to me for our 30th. You want me to keep it?" "No," I said. "I want it to sit here. Remind us both." He nodded. We didn't say what it should remind us of. We didn't need to. But peace is never quiet, not when thieves are desperate. The bank called him during dinner, his account was frozen. They always said pride comes before the fall. But sometimes the fall shows up as a phone call in the middle of a roast chicken dinner. David answered it on speaker, too confident, too sure of himself. "This is David Hall," he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Yeah, I'm the account holder." Silence. Then, "What do you mean suspended?" I was sitting in the corner, back at the house temporarily under court orders, with Greg's voice ringing in their ears every time they passed a hallway. David shot me a glance, stood, and took the phone to the hallway. His wife followed, fast. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew what Greg had done, frozen the bank accounts tied to the fraudulent trust. Any assets related to the house were now flagged. The pension accounts rerouted. Even the utilities were hanging by threads. When they returned, their plates were untouched. She didn't even look at me. He tried to smile. "How long are you planning to keep this up, Dad?" "Until I stop hearing lies." That evening, someone else showed up to the house. Rick Donovan. David's former college roommate turned contractor, one of the people he'd leaned on to get approval for the house flip. Rick didn't knock. Just walked up the path and rang the bell like he was already halfway out the door. I opened it before David could. "Rick," I said calmly. He blinked. "Mr. Hall." David appeared behind me. "Hey, man, come on in." Rick held up his hand. "Just here to drop the estimate sheet. I won't be proceeding." David's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm pulling out." "Why?" Rick glanced at me. "I don't get involved in family theft." David stepped out onto the porch. You said you needed the job. And you said you owned the house. I checked the injunction records. You lied, man. His wife called from inside. He's just bitter. He's trying to make you choose sides. Rick shook his head. No, you made us choose sides. And the town's watching. He walked off. David stood there longer than he should have, staring at nothing. Inside, the house felt smaller. Tighter. The phones rang less. Emails went unanswered. His LinkedIn bio quietly removed the real estate investor tag. I knew what was coming next. Not remorse. Desperation. The next morning, I got a call from Greg. You're going to want to see this. I met him at his office. He pulled up a folder of new filings. Your daughter-in-law's brother, Mark, got subpoenaed this morning. For what? Forgery, wire fraud, intent to sell under false title. I exhaled slowly. Turns out, Greg added, he used a dummy LLC to try to list the house twice, one under their name, and one under his, to drive up the price. Crossed the wrong lender, and now he's cooked. The house flip wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crime. And the fallout had only just begun. Later that night, I returned to the house to pack more of my things. I found the crystal whiskey glass placed back on the mantel, almost like it had never been touched. But something had changed. It wasn't a symbol of memory anymore. It was a warning. And they knew it. Their empire wasn't just crumbling, it was hollow all along. At church, no one saved them a seat. By the time Sunday rolled around again, everyone knew. You could feel it in the church parking lot. In the way people nodded at me for the first time in weeks, not out of pity, but respect. In the way nobody stopped David or his wife as they walked toward the front doors, not even to shake hands. The congregation was already seated when they arrived. No one had saved them a seat. Not even Pastor Mills. He was standing at the pulpit when they entered. His sermon notes in one hand, a single envelope in the other. I've received word, he said into the mic, that there's been confusion surrounding one of our most long-standing families. And I believe confusion grows best in silence. He didn't look at them directly. He didn't need to. He turned the envelope over. Last year, the church board accepted a generous end-of-year donation pledged in the name of the Hall family. We've since been informed that the donor had no legal right to pledge that property. Murmurs rippled through the sanctuary. David shifted uncomfortably in the pew he had found in the back. Pastor Mills continued, we're returning the donation. And moving forward, any gifts tied to disputed ownership will be declined. Someone whispered, loud enough to be heard, good. Another added, took long enough. I watched David shrink in his seat, his wife squeezing his hand like she could hold him together with pressure alone. After the service, I stood outside beneath the awning, the January wind biting at my jacket. One by one, people stopped to speak with me. Marjorie Wilkins brought me a plate of cookies she used to only bake for the children's choir. Your Carol always said the truth wins slow, she said. I nodded. Slow's better than never. Bill Anders stepped forward and said, if you need help fixing the roof, you know I've still got my ladder. Even Roy from the diner walked up, patted my shoulder, and muttered, shouldn't have taken the chair out. That was wrong. I didn't say much. I didn't have to. Because the shift wasn't just legal now. It was spiritual. It was social. Inside the fellowship hall, Pastor Mills raised a toast over plastic cups of apple cider. To integrity, he said. Then he looked at me. I believe this belongs to you. He handed me something wrapped in a velvet napkin. I opened it carefully. The crystal whiskey glass. Untouched. Perfectly intact. He'd kept it for me, since the New Year's party, apparently. taken it off the mantel before it could be broken again. It shimmered under the fluorescent lights. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. He stormed out without a word, but his shame stayed behind. The will changed that morning, just not in their favor. The legal documents arrived on my porch in a plain white envelope. No ceremony. No warning. Just truth. Greg had filed the revised will and submitted the final deed transfer that morning. Everything we'd discussed over coffee and silence was now inked, stamped, and permanent. I was no longer the owner of the house. But neither were they. I stepped into the county clerk's office an hour later and handed them the signed documents. Transfer of property. Full ownership. To the Veterans Housing Restoration Fund. The same organization Carol used to donate to after church bake sales. The woman at the counter read the line twice. You're giving it to a charity? Not giving, I corrected. Returning it to purpose. By noon, the Hall residence was no longer a family asset. It was a future shelter. A home for people who had truly lost everything, not ones who manipulated inheritance law to stage power plays over their elders. Greg met me for lunch afterward. Simple deli sandwiches, no fanfare. I handed him a photo, one we'd taken when Carol first finished the backyard rose garden. In the corner of the photo sat the whiskey glass, resting on the arm of my chair. Full. Clean. Uncracked. He raised his eyebrows. You want this in the case file? No, I said. I want it in the donation letter. He chuckled. You sure you don't want to frame it? I shook my head. Let them see it. Proof I gave more than they ever understood. That afternoon, the charity's director came by the house. David answered the door. I stood behind the man, silent. The director smiled and extended his hand. Mr. Hall, thank you for the opportunity. We'll begin renovations next month. I understand there's still some items in storage. Would you like us to help relocate them? David didn't speak. His face flushed red, then pale. Excuse me? The deed's been transferred, the man said gently. You're no longer legal residents here. But we'd be happy to give you a few days to gather your belongings. His wife appeared in the doorway, face blotchy, mouth open like she'd swallowed something sharp. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I said finally. I took back my name. And I gave away your lie. They stood frozen. I built that house with calloused hands, I said. And you thought you could flip it with a forged pen. You had no right, she started. I had every right. You had none. I turned to leave. No more shouting. No more posturing. Just gravity. At the curb, I opened the passenger door of my truck. The crystal glass was waiting in its towel wrap, tucked neatly in the glove box. I placed it on the dashboard. It caught the light like a lighthouse lamp. Still cracked. Still holding. The door stayed closed. For the first time, it was mine. I heard the knock, but I didn't move. It was just past 9 p.m. when it happened. A soft knock, 3 times, spaced out. Not urgent. Not angry. Just hopeful. I was staying in a small rental near the lake. 1 bedroom, no television, heater that rattled like it was powered by ghosts. But it was quiet. Clean. Mine. I didn't answer the door right away. I sat in the armchair, facing the window, holding the crystal whiskey glass in both hands. The crack down the side looked darker in the lamplight, like a scar remembering its pain. The knock came again. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. David stood there. Alone. No jacket. No umbrella. Just damp hair from the night air and eyes that looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen them. Dad, he said quietly. I didn't reply. He glanced behind him like he was afraid someone might be watching. I didn't know where else to go. I'm sure the shelter director could recommend a place, I said. That's not fair. Neither was stealing my name. He lowered his head. I didn't come to argue. Then what? He swallowed. To say I'm sorry. To ask if we can fix this. I said nothing. I lost everything, he continued. Mark's under indictment. Our accounts are frozen. We're being sued by 2 contractors. We have no house, no plan. We're sleeping in her sister's basement. And I want to come home. I raised my eyebrows. What home? The one you gave away. That was never your home. I was scared, he said, voice cracking now. We thought you were slipping. We didn't want to lose everything if you died? I offered. He nodded slowly. You didn't wait to lose me, I said. You tried to erase me before I even left. He looked down. I brought something, he said, reaching into his coat pocket. A folded envelope. Worn at the edges. I found this in Mom's old recipe box. It's a letter. She wrote it to you before she passed. He held it out. I didn't take it. I thought maybe it would remind you. I don't need a reminder, I cut in. I remember everything. The pause between us was longer this time. He looked smaller now. Not the man who'd called the police. Not the son who'd forged my name. Just a boy who'd lost the house he never earned. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he whispered. But I'm asking anyway. I took a breath. Then I reached back inside and retrieved the crystal glass. I held it out. He reached for it. And I pulled it back. You don't get to hold what you tried to break. His eyes watered. I wish you the best, I said, calm and even. But you're not welcome to what you already sold. The door swung closed between us. Slow. Certain. From behind it, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in years. His sob. But I didn't move. The tears blurred, but my silence cut sharper. This New Year's Eve, I raised my glass alone, and proud. The charity opened the renovated house on December 31st. They called it Carol's Place. A transitional home for veterans and single fathers, those scraping together second chances with nothing but their names and grit. The backyard garden had been restored. The kitchen was expanded. The guest room, my room, had been converted into a reading nook with donated books and a view of the lake. The ribbon cutting drew half the town. Even folks who hadn't said my name in 6 months showed up. Pastor Mills gave the invocation. Let this home be more than shelter, let it be a stand against forgetting where we came from. There were folding chairs on the lawn. Apple cider. Laughter. No tension. No whispers. No David. No daughter-in-law. Their names weren't even mentioned. I stood near the steps as the ceremony wrapped, hands behind my back. When the applause faded, the director of the foundation stepped forward, holding a wooden shadow box. He opened it slowly. Inside was the crystal whiskey glass. Cleaned. Whole. Centered in black velvet like a relic. I believe this was yours, Mr. Hall, he said into the microphone. I walked up and accepted it. Then I turned to the crowd. This belonged to my wife, I said. It held every toast we ever gave, weddings, birthdays, the day our son came home from college. And the day he stopped calling me Dad. The crowd fell quiet. I gave up this house not to win, but to end the game. And to remind myself, dignity isn't given by family or court papers. It's earned back, piece by piece. Pastor Mills stepped forward and lifted his own plastic cup of cider. To Mr. Hall, he said. Not because he fought, but because he endured. The crowd raised their glasses. That sound, the lift of collective respect, was louder than applause. It echoed. Afterward, I stood alone on the back porch, looking out over the frost-covered lawn. The new tenants would arrive next week. I wouldn't live here anymore. But I hadn't belonged here for a long time. Now it belonged to someone who needed it more than I did. As the sun dropped behind the trees, I took the crystal glass from its box, walked to the edge of the porch, and poured a single splash of Carol's favorite scotch. It glowed amber in the light. Still cracked. Still whole. Still mine. The glass stood on the railing, catching the last light of the year, raised not in celebration, but in survival.